Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Books and Bytes. Today, we're going to be taking a deep dive into Measure What Matters by John Doerr. This book is all about a goal-setting system called Objectives and Key Results, or OKRs, and how they can revolutionize the way we work and live. We've got a lot to cover, so let's just jump right in.
Yeah, it's really fascinating how Doerr traces the OKR system from its origins at Intel with Andy Grove to its adoption and evolution at Google and beyond. He really makes the case that the system can be applied effectively anywhere, from billion-dollar businesses to your personal to-do list.
Okay, so before we get into the nitty-gritty, can you give our listener a quick overview of the book's main themes? What are we looking at here? What are the big takeaways?
Well, Measure What Matters really kind of boils down to a few core principles, focus, alignment, commitment, and stretch. It's about setting ambitious goals, making them public, and tracking progress rigorously. Doerr argues that this system not only boosts productivity, but also creates a more engaged and fulfilling work environment.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Let's start at the beginning. How does Doerr introduce this concept of OKRs?
Well, the book kicks off with Doerr's time at Intel and the profound influence of Andy Grove, who was obsessed with optimizing productivity and building a culture of excellence. Grove's mantra was, ideas are easy, execution is everything. And OKRs are all about turning ideas into concrete actions.
So how do those actions actually take shape? What are the mechanics of setting and using these OKRs?
Okay, so an objective is the ambitious goal you want to achieve. It should be clear, concise, and inspirational. Then you break that objective down into measurable key results, which are the how. They tell you how you'll know if you're on track.
Okay, yeah, I'm starting to see how this system brings a lot more clarity than just having vague goals floating around in your head. Doerr uses that great analogy of a football team, right?
Yes, he compares a team without OKRs to a football team with everyone running in different directions. But when everyone is aligned around common objectives and key results, that's when they score touchdowns.
Makes sense. Okay, so we've got our objectives and key results laid out. What happens next? How do we make sure things actually get done?
Well, that's where commitment comes in. Doerr stresses the importance of, following through, tracking progress, and holding yourself accountable. He shares a story about Jenny Kim, co-founder of Nuna, who initially struggled to implement OKRs. It wasn't until they fully embraced the system and made it a core part of their culture that they saw real results.
So it's not enough to just write down some objectives and key results. You have to truly commit to the process and make it a part of how you operate.
Exactly, yeah. Doerr emphasizes that, talking a good OKR game isn't enough. You have to put in the work, track your progress, and celebrate your achievements along the way.
This all sounds great, but let's be honest, are there any potential downsides to this system?
Yeah.
What about the pressure of constantly striving for these ambitious goals?
Doerr acknowledges that not every goal will be achieved, and that's okay. He's a big advocate for what he calls stretch goals, aiming for a tenfold improvement rather than incremental gains.
Like when Google decided to offer a gigabyte of storage for Gmail instead of the initial plan for 100 megabytes.
Exactly. That was a classic stretch goal that seemed crazy at first, but ended up revolutionizing email. The point is to push beyond perceived limitations and unlock potential, even if you fall short of the target.
So it's about the journey as much as the destination.
Absolutely. Doerr emphasizes that it's about creating a culture where failure isn't punished, but rather seen as a learning opportunity.
This all makes a lot of sense, but I'm curious how this system plays out in different contexts. Does Doerr only focus on Silicon Valley giants like Google? Or are there examples of OKRs being used in other settings?
He actually features companies of all sizes, from startups to established enterprises, even nonprofits and government agencies. One example that stands out is the Gates Foundation and their work combating malaria.
Oh, that's right. They've set some incredibly ambitious goals in that area.
Exactly. And they've made significant progress using OKRs to focus their efforts, track their progress, and measure their impact.
This is really fascinating. I could already see how these principles could apply to so many different areas of life. But let's get back to the business world for a moment. What about this idea of performance reviews? How do OKRs change the way we think about evaluating and recognizing employees?
That's a great question. Doerr is very critical of traditional annual performance reviews. He argues that they're often cumbersome, time-consuming, and ultimately demoralizing for both employees and managers.
So what does he propose instead?
He advocates for what he calls continuous performance management, or CFRs.
CFRs. Can you break that down for our listener?
Sure, CFRs stand for conversations, feedback, and recognition. It's about shifting away from the dreaded annual review and moving towards more regular open conversations and feedback. Imagine ditching those stressful yearly evaluations and replacing them with regular check-ins focused on growth and development.
Hmm. That sounds like a dream for a lot of people. I know I've certainly had my share of stressful performance reviews.
Yeah, the idea is to create a more supportive and agile system where managers become coaches, not just judges.
So instead of just focusing on past performance, it's about helping employees to grow and develop their skills for the future.
Exactly. It's about fostering a culture of continuous improvement where feedback is seen as a gift, not a punishment.
Okay, I'm starting to see how OKRs and CFRs work together to create a more dynamic and engaging work environment.
Absolutely. And it's not just about making employees happier. Doerr argues that this approach leads to better results for the organization as a whole.
This is all incredibly insightful. Before we move on, is there anything else about the beginning of the book that you think our listeners should know?
Well, one passage that really captures the essence of Doerr's message is when he writes, "Ideas are easy. Execution is everything." It's a reminder that OKRs aren't just about setting goals, but about putting in the work to make them happen.
That's a great point. It's easy to get caught up in the excitement of dreaming big, but it's the execution that truly separates the dreamers from the doers. Now, I know Doerr spends a significant portion of the book diving deep into how Google uses OKRs. Are there any other compelling examples that he highlights?
He actually dedicates an entire chapter to YouTube and their journey to becoming the world's largest video platform.
Oh, that's right. He talks about Susan Wojcicki and her ambitious goal of reaching 1 billion hours of daily watch time, right?
Yes, and it's a fascinating example of how OKRs can be used to drive not just growth, but also meaningful engagement. Wojcicki and her team implemented OKRs at every level of the organization, tracking progress, celebrating wins, and learning from setbacks.
That's really inspiring. It shows how a system like this can help even massive companies like YouTube stay focused and achieve seemingly impossible goals.
Absolutely, and it underscores Doerr's point that OKRs can be adapted to fit any context, from startups to global corporations.
This is also insightful. Before we move on to the rest of the book, is there anything else about Google or YouTube that stands out to you?
One thing that struck me was how both companies emphasize the importance of choosing the right metrics. For example, YouTube initially focused on the number of views, but they realized that a more meaningful metric was watch time.
That makes sense. It's not just about getting people to click on a video, it's about keeping them engaged and watching.
Exactly. And that shift in focus led to a series of initiatives aimed at improving user experience and satisfaction.
So it's about aligning your metrics with your ultimate goals, making sure you're measuring what truly matters.
Precisely. And that's a key takeaway from Measure What Matters as a whole.
Well, this has definitely been a fascinating start to our deep dive. I'm eager to see what other insights Doerr has to offer. Let's take a quick break and I will come back and explore the rest of the book.
Sounds good. I'm ready to keep unpacking these ideas. So far we've seen how OKRs work in a company setting, but Doerr doesn't stop there.
That's right. He also explores how these principles can be applied to, other areas of life, like personal goals.
Exactly. He challenges readers to think about their own Mount Everest, that seemingly impossible goal they could achieve if they harness the power of OKRs.
It's almost like creating a personal mission statement and then using OKRs to turn that mission into actionable steps.
Yeah, and he provides examples of people using OKRs for everything from writing a book to running a marathon to learning a new language.
It's really inspiring to see how these principles can be adapted to any context.
Yeah, and it speaks to Doerr's belief that we all have the potential to achieve extraordinary things if we set our minds to it and apply the right framework.
That's a powerful message. Now, I know Doerr also talks about the importance of culture in making OKRs work.
Absolutely. He argues that OKRs are only truly effective within the right environment.
What does that environment look like?
Well, he emphasizes transparency, accountability, and a shared commitment to continuous improvement. He uses Google as an example of a company where the OKR system is so deeply ingrained in the culture that it's almost invisible.
It's just how they do things.
Exactly. Everyone understands the company's goals, how their work fits into the bigger picture, and what's expected of them.
There's a real sense of shared ownership and accountability.
Yeah. Doerr also stresses the importance of creating a culture where feedback is seen as a gift.
Not a punishment.
Right. It's about creating a safe space for honest conversations, where people can share ideas and concerns without fear of judgment.
And it's about recognizing that feedback is not just about criticism, but also about acknowledging strengths and celebrating achievements,
Yeah, he highlights the importance of creating a culture where people feel valued, respected, and supported.
where they're encouraged to take risks and learn from their mistakes.
Exactly. And he argues that this kind of culture is essential for attracting and retaining top talent.
Now, I know Doerr dedicates a significant part of the book to discussing continuous performance management.
Yes, he's very critical of traditional annual performance reviews, seeing them as outdated and often counterproductive.
So what does he propose as an alternative?
He advocates for what he calls CFRs, conversations, feedback, and recognition.
Okay, it's about moving away from those dreaded annual reviews and towards more regular open dialogues.
Right. He provides examples of companies like Adobe that have successfully implemented CFRs and seen incredible results.
What kind of results?
Increased employee engagement, reduced attrition, and a more dynamic and innovative work environment.
It sounds like a win-win for everyone involved.
Yeah, the idea is to create a more supportive and agile system where managers act as coaches, helping employees to grow and develop their skills.
So it's about fostering a culture of continuous improvement where feedback is seen as an opportunity for growth.
Precisely. And Doerr argues that this approach not only benefits employees, but also leads to better results for the organization as a whole.
Now I'm curious about something you mentioned earlier, Doerr's emphasis on storytelling.
Yes, he's a master storyteller, weaving together personal anecdotes, historical insights, and compelling case studies to bring the OKR system to life.
Yeah, it makes the book so much more engaging and relatable.
Exactly. He introduces us to fascinating characters like Andy Grove, Larry Page, Sergey Brin, and Susan Wojcicki.
And he shares their experiences using OKRs to achieve remarkable things.
Right. One story that really resonated with me was about Bono and his organization, One.
Oh, that's right. They use OKRs to drive social change.
Exactly. It's a powerful example of how these principles can be applied beyond the business world.
To make a real difference in the world.
And it speaks to Doerr's belief that OKRs can be a force for good, helping us to achieve not just our own goals, but also to make a positive impact on society.
I'm also struck by the way Doerr emphasizes the importance of celebrating achievements.
Yes. It's easy to get caught up in the pursuit of goals and forget to take the time to appreciate our accomplishments.
He encourages leaders to create rituals and traditions for celebrating wins.
Yeah, whether it's a team lunch or a company-wide announcement.
It's about acknowledging and appreciating the hard work and dedication of individuals and teams.
And it's about fostering a positive and motivating environment where people feel valued and recognized.
Now, I know Doerr also provides a lot of practical advice on how to implement OKRs effectively.
Absolutely. He doesn't just tell us what OKRs are, he shows us how to use them.
He provides step-by-step guidance on everything from setting objectives and defining key results to tracking progress and conducting reviews.
Right. He emphasizes the importance of starting small and iterating.
Not trying to do everything at once.
Exactly. Start with a pilot project, learn from your experiences, and then scale the system gradually.
He also stresses the importance of getting buy-in from leadership.
Yeah, OKRs won't work if they're seen as just another top-down initiative.
Leaders need to be champions of the system, setting clear expectations and providing ongoing support.
Doerr draws on his extensive experience working with companies of all sizes to offer valuable tips and strategies for successful OKR implementation.
Now, I'm curious about Doerr's thoughts on the role of technology in all of this.
Well, he acknowledges that technology can play a valuable role, particularly in larger organizations.
He highlights the benefits of using cloud-based platforms to track goals and facilitate communication.
Right. He also sees the potential for AI and machine learning to enhance the OKR process.
But he cautions against becoming too reliant on technology.
Yes, he emphasizes that the human element is paramount, that OKRs are ultimately about people, relationships, and shared purpose.
It's about creating a culture where people feel connected, engaged, and inspired.
And that's something that technology alone can't achieve.
Now, Doerr's book was published in 2018, and the business world has certainly continued to evolve since then.
Absolutely. But the principles he outlines in Measure What Matters remain incredibly relevant.
Yeah, the need for focus, alignment, commitment, and stretch has only become more important in today's fast-paced competitive environment.
Right. And the importance of building a strong culture where people feel empowered and supported is more critical than ever.
Doerr's book provides a blueprint for navigating complexity, achieving alignment, and driving results in a world that's constantly changing.
It's a reminder that while the tools and technologies we use may evolve, the fundamental principles of effective goal setting and leadership remain timeless.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Measure What Matters, I want to circle back to that question you posed earlier. What's your Mount Everest?
Yeah, it's a question that can be, well, both exhilarating and daunting, right? It's about identifying that one big, audacious goal that would truly make a difference in your life.
It could be anything, right? Anything that inspires you and pushes you beyond your comfort zone.
Yeah, and what's fascinating is that the process of identifying your Mount Everest is often more valuable than the achievement itself.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's about clarifying your values and aligning your actions with your aspirations.
Okay.
Doerr's book reminds us that we all have the potential to achieve extraordinary things. And he provides us with the tools and inspiration we need to make those dreams a reality.
Absolutely. Now, before we sign off, I want to leave our listener with one final thought.
Okay.
Okay. Through a Measure What Matters, Doerr emphasizes aligning goals with values. But what happens when those values come into conflict?
That's a great question. It's something we all grapple with. Imagine you're leading a team, and you've set these ambitious goals for growth, right? But achieving those goals might require, well, tough decisions that could compromise your company's commitment to, say, sustainability.
Right. That's a classic dilemma, right?
Yeah.
How do you balance business objectives with your values?
Yeah, there's no easy answer. It's about navigating those tensions and making ethical and effective decisions.
Sounds like it requires open conversations, a willingness to compromise.
Yeah. And ultimately, it's about making choices that align with your core values, even when they're difficult.
That's such an important reminder. It's not just about achieving goals, but doing so in a way that reflects our values.
Precisely. So as you set and pursue your goals, remember to ask yourself not just, what do I want to achieve, but also, how do I want to achieve it, and why does it matter?
That's fantastic advice. This deep dive into Measure What Matters has given me a lot to think about. And for you, dear listener, we hope this has inspired you to set some audacious goals of your own. Thanks for joining us on Books and Bytes, and we'll see you on our next deep dive.